Good morning. Welcome to the Front Burners. I am Blessing Eichie. How time flies when you're having fun. Yes, you were having fun over the weekend before you knew it. Wow. Monday was in your face already, and it's time to get business. It's time to get work done. I need to find out from my gentlemen in the studio how it was for them over the weekend, if they're ready to roll up your sleeves and get work done. And by getting work done, it means that critical issues are going to be handled right here on the staple. That's why it's called the Front Burners. I have Dr. Idahosa Osamhanze and Oyinpreye Krumale with me, as always. Good morning, sir.
Great Nigeria. Good morning, colleagues.
Yes.
Pleasure to be here again.
Great Nigeria. I agree to that.
Good
Hello,
morning
Preye.
to you, Blessing.
Good morning.
Good morning, Doc.
Good morning, Preye.
Nice to see you again.
How was the weekend? Was it
Very
less than
short.
48 hours?
Very short.
Very short. So maybe like 24 hours.
Less than that.
Less than that.
Well, it was a very nice weekend for me in leadership, taking its toll on Saturday at Ikeja, Maryland. And of course, there's a whole lot happening on the political scene that really kept one alive. And truths are coming out, and Nigeria is getting better for you.
I know what you're referring to, but I'd rather not say. Okay, there's a new addition to the family. It gets bigger over here. So let's go over to something you don't want to miss. When we get on that side, you'll find out who the new addition to the family is. Right, so from the place where the new addition to the family was threatening to steal my neck piece, you know how last borns they do in the family. They give everyone in the house trouble. But we're good with this last born. So nice stories there from something you don't want to miss. But there are other stories that have made headlines, and we'll be looking at some of them. And one of them has to do with the new tax bill, which the chairman of the Presidential Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms Committee, Taiwo Oyedele, has again urged state governors to support the tax bills currently before the National Assembly, as it will ultimately, according to him, increase their revenue despite concerns that they might lose funds. So Taiwo Oyedele added that the country's current tax system is not conducive for economic growth, as it disproportionately taxes the poor and capital instead of focusing on profits. Okay, so the tax bill has been an issue that has been debated at the National Assembly, and not just the National Assembly, different stakeholders from around the country, even the governors, the 36 state governors had debated over that, and there were contentious issues. So we'll look at some of that after this break. Please stay tuned. Many thanks for staying tuned to the Front Burners on Sook News TV. Yes, looking at stories that made it to the headlines. We're looking at the chairman of the Presidential Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms Committee, Mr. Taiwo Oyedele, asking Nigerian governors to do more to ensure that the tax bill is passed. Now, he has criticized Nigeria's current tax system, and he stated that it is not conducive for economic growth, as it disproportionately taxes the poor and capital instead of focusing on profit. Doc, this tax bill matter has been a long one from last year, and the chairman of the Presidential Fiscal Policy and Tax Reform Committee, Taiwo Oyedele, had said that by the end of first quarter of this year, it will be passed. Now, it's scaled second reading at the National Assembly. The Governors Forum had even on their own done their bit by agreeing on the bill when the contentious area, which is the VAT sharing, was addressed. And so they moved it to 50% based on equity, 20% on the 30% on derivation, then 20% on population. But it seems like there's still gray areas around the bill.
You know, the last time we spoke about this, I was very clear. The issues around the tax bill is not just the VAT, it's beyond the VAT. And it is also the focus of the current regime in terms of what they want to do, and that is what Oyedele had actually alluded to here, where, of course, the object of tax is supposed to be profit rather than capital. I grew up as a young child and see this. My father repeatedly said to me that it is only prodigal sons that eat seed yam. I come from a village where, of course, we plant yam, and so when you are harvesting seed yam, because of the time of the year, of course, it comes, it's always very sweet. And then, of course, you are tempted to always roast them on the fire and eat. And he always said to me, look, you are not supposed to eat that thing because that's the seed, because you need to plant in another planting season. Because if you eat out your seed, what then will you not use to plant when the other season comes? And I think these are the issues that are on the table at the moment with reference to tax system in Nigeria. Now, except that we have not started a business at all in Nigeria, you will see that as the day your office is just open, you see all manners of people around you. The local government will be there, the state will be there, and they are not even waiting for that business to start making profit. And then, of course, you are talking about the high mortality rate of startups in Nigeria. What's responsible is the fact that there's too much drag on these new businesses by both states and local government. And I think this is what this tax bill is actually designed to cure. That yes, state government need more money, but it's not to kill businesses. Yes, you will get more money if you create the enabling environment or the ecosystem for these businesses to prosper. Then you can tax the profit. But the target here is that taxes are on the poor. You go to the market area, you see somebody who is struggling with a total wear on her head that is not up to 5,000, and council people are chasing them up and down, and all this kills initiative. And what the government is saying is that, look, let's not focus on the seed. Let the emphasis be on the profit. And for profit to happen, the state must create the enabling environment for those businesses to thrive. Because it's only when business thrives you can actually get money. We know that the state governments are under pressure to deliver. But I think they can also manage the little that is coming to them in terms of the allocation that is coming from the center. Yes, you have to make internally generated revenue, but you also ensure that as you're taxing those businesses, that the following year, they are able to still be in operation so that you have something to continue to tax. And I think this is a challenge that is before state governors, and I think they must do well to ensure that this work, and it's in favor of businesses, because it's only when business prosper that we can actually solve the problem of the poor.
Harmonizing the tax system in Nigeria is a very critical thing, but with this back and forth with the governors, is it just going to be a thing of appeal, keep appealing to them to see reasons?
Okay, one thing I noticed is that whenever a reform or a new bill, let me just call it a reform, is being introduced, you're going to get some form of feedback. Now, we have not even tried this new tax. We've not even started. But the thing is, this is what we are going to do, and we've highlighted the document, and we've presented the document, and the big wigs, the businessman, the politician, they are all looking at it, and they are, looking at the future. How is this going to, remove money from my pocket? How am I going to block that money that is going to be removed from my pocket? So one remarkable statement that Mr. Oyedele made that I feel he hasn't, I probably have not heard him made before until recently, is that the responsibility that it is incumbent on the state governors to tax the high net worth individuals in their state. And by that he was saying the 10% of the high net worth individuals in their respective states, that if the state governors tax these persons, it's going to increase the IGR. And I like the fact that this tax reform bill, on one hand, widens the tax net. Though on the second hand, Mr. Professor Kabiru says it actually narrowed the tax net because a vast majority of Nigerians will not be taxed. And I think by that, he might be referring to about the 90% that Taiwo Oyedele was talking about. So on the other hand, how does the government tax the net worth? Individuals. What does it tax? Those who have helicopters, the government tax them. Those who have luxury items like a yacht, does the government tax them? Those who have big organizations that are earning more than the 50 million naira to 250 million naira threshold that the Oyedele administration is trying to exempt from the tax, does the government tax them? Through what means does the government tax them? And does the government have a very, very sound system to get back, to carry out this taxation, that it gets back the monies from them, or the required amount that is taxing them? The mechanism to use, how the government is not going to spend much in trying to recoup that tax from the system, is a very, very good thing to consider. But the thing is, how does the government do this? I'm talking about the subnational governments. How do they do this? Now, let me come back.
Government.
Yes,
so
yes.
That those who listen can be clear. It's subnational.
Government. Okay, so how do they do that? In a state like Lagos, we have been singing the praise of Lagos for a long time because they've been at it since even the Tunde Fowler, who went up to the central government to become the tax chief. He was doing a very good job at the state level in Lagos State. So we think Lagos State already has a system in place through which it's getting this monies to boost its IGR. What about other state governors? Are they doing the same? So probably maybe the state governors that are not living up to that responsibility are the ones seriously engaged against this. Now, when it comes to tax exemptions, and Oyedele is talking about not taxing the poor, what does he define as the poor? Who are the poor people? Because if he's defining the poor people as those who are earning the 60,000 or the 70,000 naira, whose annual take-home will not be up to 800,000 naira, or at least 800,000 naira, then I think his definition of the poor is not standard. He needs to take it up higher. At this moment in time, do we say those who are earning 400,000 naira or even 500,000 naira do not fall into the category of the poor? When you begin to consider the expenses that comes with them every month, providing themselves water, providing themselves the cost of transportation, the cost of food item, the inflation of food in the country, and every other thing they need to deal with, including watching and taking over their children, paying school fees and all of that. Are we going to say those won't fall in the category of the rich people? So I think Taiwo Oyedele needs to reconsider the definition of the poor, because if we are talking about the 60 and 70,000 naira and call them poor, I think that is way below the poverty line. You should bring it up a little.
Yeah, on that I agree with you. Let's look at the proposed tax reform for personal income tax. So exemption for earnings up to 800,000. If we look at that, if we divide that 800,000 per annum divided by 12, you know what you will get. So how many people fall into that category? That's just, you will say some people earn that a year, but what about those who earn above that? There's still a lot of the population. So 15% tax on the next 2.2 million. So if you earn that, you're still going to pay tax. 18% tax on the following 9 million, 21% tax on the next 13 million. Well, if we look at the cost of living these days, these people are not exactly rich people. So they're more like, let's say, average. Should we call them middle class? Well, so, and if we look at what the businesses, on the part of the small businesses, this is where I've always agreed with this new tax bill for exemption of businesses that make 50 million annually or less. That's a good one. But what Taiwo Oyedele is even saying to the state governors that they've not explored the aspect of property tax enough. Now, that if they had explored that part, some of the monies they think they would lose by this tax exemption, they would actually gain. And these days, a lot of people are going into real estate, buying properties and all. That may be a good way. But I think that more than even the property tax, the state governors are still getting a lot, because the personal income tax, they are gaining from it. Property tax, they're gaining from it. Land tax, value-added tax, they're gaining from it. So this should suffice, and not being about let's just tax this, tax that, tax that. You are taxing, and the people are groaning. I think there should be a line to say, okay, let's make do with what we're getting. A lot is still going to come, 50% based on equity for VAT. That's something. They're still going to get federal allocation. So it should not be that all the government is looking at is getting revenue through taxation alone.
Yeah, but government most of the time are not supposed to be business people who are going to earn income, except from royalty, which they also have to do with other people. The only way government all across the world gets money is through taxation. And what the tax bill has done is to ensure that everybody is not put on the same basket. And said, okay, because it's 20% all across board, personal income tax is just take 20% straight off your salary. But no, government has decided to say, no, let it be graduated such a way that those who are earning less pay less, and those who are earning more pay more. And I think that is what the global standard is. And I see, if you look at what is happening everywhere across the globe, you see we are actually trying to implement things that, of course, represent what the thinking of the global community is. So I don't want to believe that they are insensitive or the definition of poor is not right. What they're saying is that there are some categories of people who cannot afford it at all. And therefore, these people, you have to eliminate it, whether you like it or not. I have said it on this table time and time again. There are some businesses in Nigeria that cannot afford 50,000 for staff. There are some businesses that cannot afford even 35,000 for staff. So everybody don't work for the federal government. Those who are paying the minimum wage you're talking about of 60,000, 70,000, they are working under government. There are businesses who complete annual return is not up to 2 million. So how do you expect these kind of people to be able to pay such a bill? That's a challenge. So you still find within the environment people who are earning way less than the minimum wage. And it's incumbent on government not to tax those people. It's incumbent on government not to tax those people because they have not entered into that threshold to say contribution. Now, for those who are working for government, who earn above that 800 threshold, that the minimum wage threshold had covered, yes, of course, they are contributing. And they are drawing this salary from government. And there's no way that government will not tax it because this resource, where will government get money to pay you if it's not taxing? So government just take part of it, and that is like a blessing has read as 15% from those who are within that threshold, 800, maybe up to about 2 million per annum. And then those who are above 2 million, of course, they pay 20%, just by the way it's graded. So what this means is that you're considering some people who are not within the tax net. That is, for me, what it is. There are other ways states can make money. Now, of course, state can invest. But what is real principal here for state is also the wastefulness that is also seen with resources that come to the state. Because if you were to look at it, in the last 18 months, state has actually received far more than they used to get. Yes, we can argue that, yes, inflation has eaten deep into some of all these things. And of course, the situation and the challenges that COVID brought, of course, the war in the Ukraine, the Hamas-Israeli crisis really has skyrocketed price of things. No thanks to the removal of subsidy from petrol and energy, and of course the floating of the naira, which had greatly affected the cost of doing business. Yeah, but there's still little to show in some of the states that really to say this we have been able to do. So it's not just about more money for the state, and I think it's just more than more money for the state. I have argued somewhere before, people say, oh, states, especially those who are oil bearing, they are not getting too much. And the question I always ask is the little they are getting, What are they doing with it? So if we see that you are faithful over a little, the argument for much become expedient. But when you are not faithful with the little that you earn and you are arguing for more, that of course becomes very worrisome. And I think these are the things that we have seen. And not to also talk about in the past where we have seen state governors who have left office and see what they have left with and the resource that would have been plowed into the development of the state find their way into private accounts of this principal stakeholder in the state. So these are the issues that we will need to deal with. States also will need structural reforms, not just at the federal level. You see, there are a lot of activities that you see happening around the state where monies are frittered away. We need to do that reform so that state can also be within that threshold to look at leaner government and then more efficient than having a bogus structure that really cannot deliver value. These are some of the things that I feel they are possible within the state to be done.
Overall, I think that when we're talking about global standards, we should also be careful to put the Nigerian situation into context. Because if we look at what obtains elsewhere in terms of the percentage that citizens are made to pay as tax, and we look at what the citizens have to provide for themselves, by themselves, I don't think the basis for comparison are really there. Now, for someone who's earning 2.2 million annually, and you're taxing 15% of that person's income. So if you divide that by 12, it comes to about 183,000 and some fraction. If you put 15% tax on that, so that means monthly that person is paying over 27,000 naira as tax. That's still a lot. So if we look at that, even when you want to tax, I think the new tax bill should have considered the percentages that is approved for taxing or for taxation. So 15%, 18%, 23%, on earnings less than 25 million, I think that's still too much. It's a burden on the taxpayer, considering that these people still provide for themselves, by themselves, certain basic amenities that those who are paying high taxes in other climes, with which we are making comparison, may not necessarily have to pay.
Like what?
Like power. So you are paying for power supply, you are also fueling your generator. Like security, you are paying high taxes. This is common knowledge, and this is a reality that almost every Nigerian goes through. You are paying for security, you are paying your security man and all. Your road is bad. Sometimes it takes community efforts to provide palliative measures. Now
you buy transformer.
You understand? So, and you will still charge these taxes. So let us also factor in certain things.
In the world where people don't pay for the light they use.
No, but not buying transformer.
Not buying transformer, not buying fuel in addition to power supply.
This is where the argument has always been. And that is because we have not allowed the free hand of the market to determine prices.
To what extent do we determine the free hand of the market? Is it when we're going to pay 5,000 naira per unit?
Yes, it's important. It's just important.
We can't run a full capitalist economy as it is.
Yeah, these are the conversation, and we have to have this conversation as logically as possible. You see, it is either we want to eat an omelette or we don't want. There's no way to eat an omelette without breaking an egg. Here in the country, we don't want
I think that egg has long been broken.
No. We don't want to break the egg, but we want an omelette. So if you want an omelette, then you have to break the egg. Now let's look at it from this perspective. If you go to UK, for example, if you go to United Arab Emirates, for example, if you go to America, for example, cost of energy is on the rooftop. Don't let anybody deceive you. The cost of energy is on the rooftop. And so people are paying for what they get.
What they get.
Yes.
But do people get what they pay for here?
Now, what you have here is that those who are providing you the services are saying, at the rate we collect, we can give you optimal service. And government say, oh, our people don't have capacity to pay. So we don't want you to increase rate. This is the same issues that we've been having and having conversation here on this table over telecom, for example, where the business owner don't have the power to determine what his tariff will be. The government has to fix the tariff because it's putting into consideration the state of the people's economy. So why am I saying this? Is it that we are saying, okay, we want good light, we want good road, then somebody had to fund it. Now, if government is not having enough taxation and government is not getting enough royalty, where will the money now come to build the basic infrastructure?
All right. Okay. So, Doc, there's something that we have to address, and that is talking about responsibility from those who are imposing tax and those who are being taxed. If I am paying tax, I intend it is my right to see what that tax is doing for me. If I don't get that in return, I'll become reluctant to pay tax. In fact, in most cases, I will evade tax. Mr. Oyedele was even stating a few of the organizations he said that pays the VAT, that pays the VAT. And that means about 97 organizations are not even paid. He stated a few of the companies there that are paying the VAT, and they're just three. He said they constitute about 3% of paying the VAT. That's a lot coming from a few, not up to 5 organizations that he mentioned there. So, some Nigerians whom we have spoken to personally, they say they do not mind paying the tax. But when they pay this tax, if they can see what this tax is being done, what the money you're being taxed and you're paying, and you could see that your roads are being fixed. So that when you drive on that road, the tire that you bought 6 weeks ago does not start developing problem. You're paying tax. Yet, they want to fix electricity. There's a problem, and the transformer exploded in your vicinity where you live. Then, you are being told by the community association that, look, we have been waiting for NEPA, for the authorities, for more than 6 months. We cannot continue to wait, because if we continue to wait, it will go for years. They are forced, compelled to part with money. Apart from paying their taxes, they have to part with money to buy transformers. Because there are no security, they are going to get security for themselves. Some of the homes here do not have pipe-borne water. Now, they still have to bring out the money for themselves to cater to that. Some of the public schools are not giving what they need to give for the development of the young people. Then the public school system now crumbles. Then people will now have to revert and resort to private schools who are now making lots of money. And some of the politicians are the owners of those private schools. So, so when you talk about taxation, the citizens on their own part are being responsible.
But the
governing authorities.
You have said something that seems contradictory.
No.
And you're saying only 3% of companies are paying VAT. What does that show you?
I was trying to, because it is still the responsibility of the government. It is still the responsibility of the government.
When we're looking
Doc, sorry, just a moment. It is still the responsibility of the government.
I understand that the government has responsibility.
But it's not a contradictory.
Yeah, it's contradictory because if you're saying that we are paying enough, and in your submission, you also have agreed.
Responsibility it is to hold these other organizations.
Yes,
so I'm talking about
the VAT is just one of the taxes.
Yes, even in the VAT, if you say we are paying enough, and people want to see what government is doing with money. I moved from Lagos here to Badagry last Thursday, and on that ECOWAS road, you can see huge work, iron work, that is going on.
In Lagos State?
No. It's a federal road.
Okay.
It's ECOWAS road. Nigeria is doing their own part. That road has been on for a very long time. Now, if you go to that place now, you see work going on tremendously. Now, you see what is happening in the coastal road. From Lagos end, from Calabar, Akwa Ibom end. I was listening to Mahi yesterday, talking about the numbers of roads in Nigeria that are currently under construction. how has that engendered people want to pay? See, the challenge we have is that there's so much entitlement mentality here in our environment that people feel that there's other ways government generates money. In short, as a matter of fact, people think that government is making so much money from oil that the money we make from crude is enough to do everything that we want to do. But like, it's a common arithmetic that we can all do to look at what barrel you produce in a day, what is the size that go to the federal government, what goes to the other partners in the joint venture, and then you are able to approximate that and see what revenue come to government. And in the last, 8 years or thereabout, Nigerian revenue from oil in total of our current GDP has just been about 5% or thereabout. So which means there's paucity of fund. So if we want good road, then we should be able, and that is why, of course, this government is also talking about taxing the road by putting tolls on the road, so that we can have enough fund to develop infrastructure. The argument that, it's solely until we see good road we will start to pay tax, I think is neither here nor there.
Do you know the
what I
grievances
think
of the
is this.
people?
What I think is this. Now, even if we're having a high rate of tax evasion, part of the reasons people have evaded is because they haven't seen what the government has been doing. If we want to encourage people to pay tax, first of all, you expand the net, not necessarily increasing the rate or making it at a high rate, which is this. Now, some organizations, why don't they charge VAT? Because when they add VAT to the cost which the end-use consumer will pay, it makes the prices become more expensive. And sometimes customers would complain, while there are some that actually collect VAT, but don't remit. So there are two sides to it. But by and large, what I think is this. If we make the tax rate not one that is so much of a burden, and you expand the net, you will have more people paying tax, you will still get it. But if the percentage of the tax is high, you will find people doing all that they can do to evade tax. So which do we want? Do we want a few people that we can get to pay tax, paying tax, or we want more people to pay tax and not necessarily evade? I know what you want to say, that people will always find a reason to evade tax, even if it's 1% or 2%.
Yeah.
But you will have less people evading when the percentage is not so high.
Is even to compare apple with apple. In this case, not possible. Let's even compare apple with orange. Nigeria, vis-a-vis its neighbors, Cameroon, Benin Republic, Niger, Chad. And do the comparison in terms of
compliance, tax compliance.
I'm not talking about compliance, I'm talking about the rates. Who has higher rates?
In taxation?
Yes.
Oh, dog.
So you need to do that analysis.
But what is the compliance level, even with that high tax rate?
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that even in the neighboring country, compliance is also huge compared to us here. I made a joke here the other day. If you go to Cotonou here, Benin Republic, with a single whistle like this on the road, the motor will stop. But with last month, road safety, police staying at the same spot on our road with traffic light, drivers still will get through and pass away. So this is issue that we have to deal with.
Okay.
And there are basic for me and there are ethical issues.
The doctor, there's one part you're not considering.
I will consider that part, but it's because it's also to understand that, you see, there's an environment where people seem to understand that, yes, we were taught in elementary school that, yes, as citizens, you have rights. But what guarantees those rights is your obligations. So it's not one-sided. Because if we accept that government is, for example, a contract, like Thomas Hobbes and John Locke had argued, that we have said, government, come and take care of us, and we are going to provide for the use of some of all these tax, these are issues that we can also think about. But don't also take away. We have also argued that here, why, of course, you see, it takes a long for infrastructure to be completed somewhere around here. Because you also see that the same citizens who you are protecting are even damaging some of these facilities. As I was coming to work this morning, I can see where they have broken a segment of a road divider. And my son was pointing my eye to it, and I said, it is these bike people that want to use this place. Now, that costs government more money to fix. So when you vandalize equipment, you vandalize infrastructure, what are you doing? You are making it difficult for government to provide the things that you need. And these are some of the things that we also will need to speak to. So it's not just about saying government is not doing its bit, but government can only do much to the extent it has resources.
All right, I think we need to leave this conversation and just hope that, like the chairman of the Presidential Fiscal Policy and Tax Reform Committee has said initially, that he hopes the new tax bill gets passed into law or become an act by the end of the first quarter. And I hope that every cooperation that is needed by the governors and even the National Assembly to make this happen does happen at the end of the day. However, our appeal is that areas that may make it too burdensome, maybe they can look at that. It is good for citizens to pay tax so that government can have money to do things. But at the other side, I think the government also needs to look at the ability of people to pay.